Life in a medieval village was defined not by comfort or stability, but by endurance. Survival was not guaranteed, and each day presented a new set of challenges that tested the limits of human resilience. Far removed from the grandeur of castles and the authority of kings, the village was where the majority of people lived and struggled. It was a world shaped by the rhythms of nature, the weight of labour, and the constant uncertainty of what tomorrow might bring. At the heart of village life was the land. Everything depended on it. The soil determined whether families would eat or go hungry, whether livestock would thrive or perish, and whether the community would endure another year. Yet farming in the medieval period was an unforgiving task. Tools were simple, often little more than wooden ploughs and iron-tipped hoes. Fields had to be tilled by hand or with the help of animals, and even then, the results were uncertain. A season of poor weather, too much rain, too little sun, or an early frost could destroy months of labour in a matter of days. For the medieval peasant, work began before sunrise, and often continued until darkness made it impossible to see. Men, women, and children all contributed. There was no concept of rest as we understand it today. Every member of the household had a role to play, whether it was tending crops, caring for animals, gathering firewood, or preparing food. Survival depended on constant effort, and even then, success was never assured. Food was both a necessity and a constant concern. Most villagers relied on simple diets made up of bread, pottage, and whatever vegetables they could grow. Meat was rare, reserved for special occasions or those with slightly more means. Even then, portions were small. Hunger was a familiar companion, especially during the late winter months when stored supplies began to run low. This period, often called the hungry gap, was one of the most dangerous times of the year. Families rationed what little they had, stretching meals as far as possible, hoping to make it until the next harvest. Water, though essential, was not always safe. Wells and streams could become contaminated, leading to illness that spread quickly through the village. There was little understanding of disease, and no reliable way to prevent it. When sickness came, it often did so without warning and with devastating consequences. Entire households could fall ill within days. With no effective treatments, survival depended largely on luck, basic care, and the strength of the individual. Housing offered little protection from these hardships. Most villagers lived in small, simple huts made of wood, mud, and thatch. These structures were built quickly and with limited resources, offering minimal insulation against the cold and little defense against the heat of summer. Smoke from indoor fires often filled the air, as chimneys were rare or poorly constructed. Floors were made of packed earth, and animals were sometimes kept inside to provide warmth during colder months. Privacy was non-existent, and comfort was a luxury few could imagine. Sanitation was another persistent challenge. Waste was often disposed of in nearby fields or open areas, attracting insects and spreading disease. Cleanliness, while valued, was difficult to maintain under such conditions. The village environment was one where illness could thrive, and where even minor injuries could become life-threatening. A simple cut, if infected, might lead to serious complications. Without access to proper medical care, villagers relied on herbal remedies, superstition, and the occasional travelling healer. The social structure of the village added another layer to the struggle. Most peasants lived under a feudal system, owing labour and produce to a local lord in exchange for protection and the right to work the land. This arrangement left little room for independence. A significant portion of what a family produced was not theirs to keep. Taxes, rents, and obligations reduced already limited resources, making survival even more difficult. Failure to meet these demands could result in punishment or loss of land, further deepening the cycle of poverty. Despite these pressures, the village was not without a sense of community. Neighbours relied on one another in times of need, Harvests were often shared efforts, with families working together to bring in crops before weather could destroy them. In times of illness or loss, others might step in to help, offering food or labour when it was most needed. These acts of cooperation were essential, forming a fragile safety net in a world where formal support systems did not exist. Seasonal changes dictated the pace of life. Spring brought hope, as fields were prepared and seeds were sown. Summer demanded relentless work, with crops needing constant attention. Autumn was a race against time, as harvests had to be gathered and stored before the onset of winter. And winter itself was a period of endurance. Cold, hunger, and isolation defined these months. Travel became difficult, and resources were stretched to their limits. Survival during winter depended entirely on the success of the previous seasons. Religion played a central role in helping villagers make sense of their struggles. The church was often the only structured institution within the village, providing not only spiritual guidance but also a sense of order and meaning. Hardship was frequently interpreted as a test of faith or a consequence of divine will. Prayer offered comfort, even when it could not provide solutions. Religious festivals and gatherings also served as rare moments of relief, breaking the monotony of daily labour and reminding villagers that they were part of something larger than themselves. Children in medieval villages grew up quickly. From a young age, they were expected to contribute to the household. Play was limited and education was rare. Instead, children learned by doing, by working alongside their parents, observing and adapting. They became familiar with the realities of life early on, the presence of death, the importance of food, and the necessity of labour. Many did not survive into adulthood, falling victim to illness, malnutrition, or accidents. Women bore a particularly heavy burden. In addition to working in the fields, they were responsible for managing the household, preparing food, caring for children, and often contributing to small-scale production such as weaving or dairy work. Pregnancy and childbirth were especially dangerous, with high risks for both mother and child. Without proper medical knowledge, complications were common and often fatal. Yet despite the constant challenges, life in a medieval village was not without moments of humanity. There were times of laughter, shared stories by the fire, and small celebrations that brought temporary relief. Music, simple games, and communal gatherings provided brief escapes from the harsh realities of daily life. These moments, though fleeting, were essential. They reminded villagers that survival was not just about enduring hardship, but also about finding meaning within it. Over time, resilience became a defining trait. Villagers adapted to their circumstances, developing strategies to cope with uncertainty. They learned how to preserve food, how to manage limited resources, and how to support one another when needed. This resilience was not born of choice, but of necessity. It was what allowed communities to persist in an environment that offered little in the way of security. The struggle to survive in a medieval village was a constant balancing act. It was shaped by forces beyond individual control, weather, disease, social systems, and the unpredictability of life itself. Every day required effort, and every success was hard-earned. There was no guarantee of comfort, no assurance of stability, and no escape from the demands of survival. And yet, they endured. The medieval village was not simply a place of hardship, it was a testament to human persistence. In the face of relentless challenges, people continued to live, to work, and to hope. Their lives, though often marked by struggle, reveal a deeper truth, that even in the harshest conditions, the will to survive remains one of the strongest forces of all.